Okay, this is a little model showing the main parts of a music box. This here is the barrel, which stores the information of the tune to be played in the form of pins that stick out. In this case they're screws, which means you can adjust the height or remove them. The holes aren't very sensibly spaced because this was originally designed, these discs that make up the cylinder were designed as part of a different system which was for playing bass drum and snare drum sounds, so they've all got holes in different places for different rhythms, but nonetheless it just demonstrates the principle. So the pins pluck tines in this sheet of wood. There's cuts in the wood to separate the tines, and the cuts are longer as you go for the deeper notes. On the back, I don't know if, oh, is that the back? No, on this side. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a groove cut along here. That's very important. I didn't do that originally, but if you don't have that groove, then when the pins pluck the tines, it plucks the whole board instead of just the tine, and that adds sounds that obscure the melody. This isn't a complete music box. At the moment, if you turn the handle, it's only a very short tune on the drum and it's hard to turn it evenly. Really, you want the drum, the cylinder, the barrel, turning much slower, and the easiest way to do this is to have some kind of gearing, which means when you turn the handle fairly quickly, which is easy to do, the barrel will turn much slower. And it also means that you have a leverage advantage, so that you can, when you pluck when you're turning, when there's a lot of the pins, you see at the moment it slows me down, but if you had the gearing it would give you a leverage advantage, so that you wouldn't need to apply so much force in order to make the pin pluck the tine. The moment this only goes forward, and if you were to go backward, then either the mechanism would disconnect in some way, so the handle would come off the axle, or in severe circumstances you'd actually break the tine. This is how music boxes are normally set up, and they normally have some kind of ratchet, like a freewheel mechanism on a bicycle, that makes it so you can only turn it one way. If you have very flexible tines, which these aren't, then you can set it up so that the plane of the tines is in line with the axle, and then you can play forwards or backwards, or you can go a little bit forwards, then a bit backwards, then a bit forwards, and you can do loads of interesting stuff. But it doesn't work if the tines are very rigid, because you have to adjust the height of the pins very finely. As it is, the height of the pins affects the volume of the note produced when the pin plucks a tine. You can adjust them all separately, but if this was, if it had gearing and therefore the wheel went slower, then raising the time would also delay the time that a note is produced, so you'd have to adjust the position of the tines as well as their height in order to get both volume variation and being in time with itself. Let's see. Yes, tuning. Generally, the easiest way to adjust the pitch of a tine is to add weight at the end of the tine, or near the end of the tine. The more weight you add, the lower the pitch. I'll just demonstrate this by changing the pitch of the lowest pitched tine. So here it is already. Now this, with a bit of blue tack, this is called blue tack, it probably has different names in different countries. It's used for sticking pictures to walls and things like that, and Mal Webb uses it to tune his mbira. And now listen. And again without. Apparently, standard music boxes have about 18 tines, which are tuned differently for different tunes, though some music boxes have many, many more. This only has 6 plucked tines to match the 6 wheels with holes in, because that was what I happened to have. There isn't really any meaning to that, other than this was easy to make with what I already had. So normally you'd have 3 times as many tines, and all this would be much smaller, so it takes up less space. I've made it bigger, partly because this is wood, because I couldn't find my metal, and partly just because it's easier to work with a larger thing, because I don't have absolutely tiny hands like a pixie or something. Anything else? I think that's probably it, pretty much. Oh yeah, standard music boxes, they have a whole series. They have a gear chain, basically, a series of gear wheels. One of them connects the handle or motor, which is with a spring, usually coiled spring, to the barrel, cylinder, whatever we're calling it. And this slows, well, it changes the gear ratio and slows it to some extent, but then usually they'd also have another series of gear wheels between the cylinder and something that spins round with little sort of sails on it, tiny little sails, which use air resistance to slow everything down. Now, you wouldn't need that bit if you were just turning by hand. I think you just want more gears. Maybe that's nonsense. Maybe you should have it even if you're turning by hand. But I'll have to experiment with that later. I think that's about it. Let's have one more